We've just heard from Dan. Prior to joining Ampere Research, Dan worked in analysis and planning at Legends International and also in sponsorship at Manchester United. He also has an MSc in Sport, Business and Innovation and has a BSc in Economics. Lorin, who we heard from earlier with his keynote. So Lorin, as you know, is Chief Executive of the Pro League. And in that role, he's responsible for the strategic vision of the organisation, so managing the operations and finances and relations with clubs and the Belgian FA as well. Previously, Lorin was Vice President of the Flemish political party, NVA, and before that, Chief Operating Officer at Club Bruges. Just next to Dan, we have Robert Klein. Robert is Managing Director of Football Media at IMG. So Robert joined IMG in January last year to oversee the company's global football media business, where he works with IMG's football team to deliver transformative growth and value for existing and new partners. So prior to IMG, Robert was responsible for setting up the German Football League's Bundesliga International to market the international rights to Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2. And before that, Robert was at Red Bull Media House, where he was head of global rights. And last but not least, just in the middle, we have Nick Moody. Nick is executive producer and head of broadcast at Sunset+Vine. So Nick recently produced coverage of the Riyadh Season Cup for Alamiya Media, and he's exec-produced Amazon Prime content, including English Premier League matches and German and Italian Champions League fixtures, plus the Autumn Nation Series rugby, also for Amazon. Nick previously held the role of head of Premier League productions at IMG, where he also exec-produced ESPN's football coverage. He's also worked as a producer at Sky and ITV, but arguably more impressively than all of that, at an SVG Forum golf event in Las Vegas, Nick once got a hole-in-one. I think a round of applause. So we're not here to talk about golf, obviously. The subject is football, and in this session we want to pick up on some of the points which were raised in Dan's presentation, expand on some of the issues and themes that were explored in Lorin's keynote as well. And we want to do two things, really. We want to explore the evolution of media rights across Europe, and then we want to look at the challenges and opportunities that that presents for everyone who works in production. So Dan, we'll start with you, if we may. So the word that really kept being repeated in your presentation was fragmentation. So fragmentation, mentioned in almost every slide, it felt like. And then in response to that, you spoke about reaggregation as well. How do you see this playing out? How do you see that whole scenario and the response of broadcasters? How will that evolve over the coming years, do you think?
Well, I think we've already started to see signs of it with that slide I showed with the various forms of distribution partnerships that we're seeing. So if rights are purchased on a co-exclusive basis, or even for a broadcaster that doesn't take up the rights, but then partnering with those who do to still carry that coverage. So we're already seeing that at play now. In terms of whether we might see something more akin to what's happening with Disney and Fox and Warner Brothers remains to be seen. Not sure whether we're going to see that anytime soon with a Sky and a BT and somebody else pulling everything into a standalone service. But maybe that is the next step at some point. If it happens, I'm not sure what the other guys think in terms of whether we're likely to see that kind of collaboration. But yeah, I think the near future is likely to be more of a continuation of those carrying rights through those kind of partnerships, either with linear carriers, especially with linear carriers, as we've seen with Eurosport being shown on DAZN and then vice versa, DAZN being shown across Sky and whatnot.
And Lorin, just returning to your keynote, you spoke a little bit about the work that you guys are doing with IMG. Can you just give us a sense of what sort of stage you're at in that project at the moment?
Yeah, so what I shared with you guys earlier is the research stage that we're at and getting to know our customer better, knowing what they want, knowing what young audiences want, and then basically calibrating between the eyeballs that it's always important for a sport like football, and the exclusivity that you're selling. So we're now in the process with Robert and his team to really define what kinds of innovations are we looking for in a new media rights cycle. And I touched upon 2 or 3. I think new business models is definitely something that we're looking at. There is different things that you could do as a league, obviously. Secondly, in terms of production, there is innovation that we're looking for, and then 3 in terms of content. And we saw that in the presentation that Dan shared with us, that we need much more interaction with our audience, and we need to give our audience really like a look in the kitchen, they say in Dutch. I don't know if that's an expression in English, but at least when there is communication, for example, between the VAR and the ref, those are really determining moments on the pitch. And as a fan, you're left in the dark today. While, of course, we see that in other sports, such as hockey, we could at least follow what's going on. And those are the things that we're looking at to make the packages that we're putting on the market more attractive, newer, and get the fan more involved. So the stage that we're at in the process is really, the research stage, and making sure that everything is set up right.
Yeah, and on that point about fragmentation and that experience that viewers are having at the moment, how much of a concern is that for you?
Well, we're a little bit already up the alley that was mentioned here just a couple of minutes ago, because the zone essentially acts as a gatekeeper in the deal that we currently have with them, but they sell through to the main telcos that are active on the Belgian market today. I think their OTT presence is small but growing, so it's something that's on the uptake, but that still has to blossom. So in Belgium, that's not the main concern as of today. It might become a concern in the new media rights cycle when different packages are allotted to different players, and if they then subsequently don't sub-license to each other, that would mean a small revolution in the Belgian media rights landscape. But as of today, we're really already in the aggregator scenario that Dan has been talking about.
Yeah. And Robert, we'll come to you now, if we may. Lorin has spoken a little bit about some of those packages. Can you give us an idea of where you see real innovation in some of those sports rights packages? Because I guess IMG has a fairly unique perspective in covering the commercial side of things as well as the production side as well. So can you give us an idea of where you really see some of that innovation?
Yeah, I think we work obviously very closely with Lorin and his team to understand how we can bring value obviously to the broadcasters. Those are the ones who are going to be hopefully putting down some good checks, but also for the fan experience. And what that means is if we have take some of the slides that you had in terms of what the viewing experience of the future is going to be, I think that's a good starting point. So today, what you traditionally have in most leagues is still a single global feed that is going out, and the experience for us if we're watching a match of the Belgian Pro League on a Saturday afternoon is going to be pretty much the same. We'll be watching the game that's on, but the customization and localization in terms of bringing in stats features, bringing in instant messaging between friends, bringing in the fantasy game, is not there yet. And that's an evolution that we want to go on, which is going to definitely add value. I just saw a couple of my ex-colleagues from Bundesliga, and one of the products that we brought out when we were there was this interactive feed. We talk about second screen, but I actually think that's wrong. The future is single screen, where you'll be able to watch your game, and you'll be able to choose before the game starts, what player do you want to follow? Do you want to do any instant messaging? And if there's another game playing at the same time, are you interested in watching goals from that game? And it will all be fed into one. So that's a futuristic vision. But to answer your question, those are the questions that we're posing and working on in terms of future products and elements, which I think and we believe will add value.
Yeah. Now feels like a good moment to see. We've got a short clip from IMG. So just to kind of explain a little bit more, hopefully, and provide a little bit more colour to the point
Yeah,
about
so
production.
maybe just before we start, it's a bit longer than just a clip. It's about 90 seconds, I believe, so just bear with us. But the idea of it is that we see at ING, working with a lot of leagues and federations across the world, we call it all football, all ways in terms of production. And this clip shows us the different areas of work that we do with MLS and Apple, where there's a 10-year relationship, what we can bring to the Belgian Pro League in terms of thinking and so on. So hopefully you'll enjoy.
The tension's killing me.
Hey, are you talking to me?
The show starts now.
You're going back on the bench, boy.
Damn, that's messed up. Did you see that?
So there's a real range of content there. So what do we have? We have Premier League, MLS, Champions League for CBS, Women's World Cup, Saudi Pro League, Football League, England's men's internationals, Africa Cup of Nations, and a mix of that kind of live and social and ancillary as well.
I would say rather than the clients, the most important is exactly that. It's the mix of content, right? So the live we've seen, it's still a driver. It's driver even in the Gen Z, but they're going to consume it differently. And therefore, and you'll be able to speak better to this, I would believe, but understanding what that is. And so from the experience that we've got across the world, we can bring these conversations of what works and what doesn't. And that viral bit, for example, the Jack Grealish, I mean, that went through the roof in terms of millions of views that it had. So I think, you know, that's a real asset, and that's the way that the whole production industry has to be thinking. Live, still a vital asset, but shoulder, digital, short form, everyone knows that's where you've got to be looking very carefully as well.
Nick, does that resonate with what you're being asked to do at the moment?
Yes, it does, and I think we always look at football and try. It's the whole package. It's not just the live game. It's the short form content. It's everything that goes around it. But I think certainly with what we've been doing recently for Prime Video and what we did out for the Riyadh Cup last month, it's always about storytelling. And we are always looking to be able to tell the story around the matches and the programs in the best possible way that we can. Yes, there's fragmentation. Yes, everybody's watching it in lots of different ways. But certainly with Prime, they've made the conscious decision that when we have 20 games in a short period of time, we want to be able to give the audience and the fans of those clubs the best possible experience. So we treat every game like it is a cup final. And we'll have the best cameras, we'll have talent across every game. It's easier to do that when you have less games. I understand that. But we certainly try to put storytelling at the foremost of what we're doing and deliver for every fan of those teams an amazing experience. I think what's going to be happening with the Premier League rights, certainly over the new term when that kicks in next year, we're going to have so many matches. I think that's going to be really hard for the broadcasters in the UK to put that type of experience across every game, because you're going to have a lot of games that are going to be on at the same time.
Yeah, and that's certainly within the UK, when we look at the new Premier League rights deal, new FA Cup deal, Football League coverage as well. The phrase that is repeated whenever those deals are announced is more games, more games. There's constantly more live games. How do you deal with that saturation? Can the production values be a differentiator in order to kind of stand out in what's going to become a really, really crowded marketplace?
Well, I think Robert and I may disagree a little bit, maybe, because Robert would probably say...
Be fun.
Yeah, that more is better. I'm not so sure that more is better. But that's my personal view. I mean, obviously, from a producer, I should be going, yes, we'll produce more and more for you. But I always want to... and it's not just about the programs that go around it. Or, you know, Sarah's here today, and I've been chatting to her about what a wonderful job she did on the final for the Carabao Cup on Sunday. You know, we're very lucky that we've got Jamie Oakford as our main match director. And they're telling stories of how they do their coverage in their games. if we are having multiple games up against each other, that is fragmenting the market even more. Is that a good thing?
I think it's a fair question. I'm not sure I've got the exact answer, but my view on it is just in the past week I was in the UK and there were 2 Premier League games that were not being broadcast, and that was an outrage. So it sounds that like the consumer would want it. Now, if we talk about the Belgian Pro League, which has got an unbelievable product, the excitement that you're going to get pretty much at the end of every season, but also this fascinating stat of the fans really being, they are club fans, but they've got a big league followership as well. That would suggest for the Belgian Pro League that we actually want to do more. And again, whether that's in the live or the non-live environment, but the appetite is absolutely there and makes it quite a fascinating prospect.
Yeah, just to build on what Robert has said, the second biggest fan club in the Belgian Pro League are people who have no club. You know, so it's really important to also service them, of course. And then the number of games doesn't always say something about the way that they're being brought to the fan. You can make a Friday night goal show when you have different fixtures that run at the same time, for example, for your second division. And that means that, you know, you have some equilibrium. And then if you combine that with what Robert just said, if you can choose which game is the main game that you're following, you know, during such a live game show, if that's the feed that you're tagging into, and then you can see all the goals that are being made in the other games, that's maybe part of the new equilibrium where we're evolving towards. Yep.
So exactly, and I think that's a key point. We've talked about it, you know, just when we were brainstorming. That goal show could be introduced by an influencer, which is just Gen Z. It's going to be just quick. You know how short the attention span is of you know, the Gen Zs, but it will work well for them, and it's something that I believe we're going to see more and more of. Right, these short, fast, TikTok-based kind of contents, and it you know, it adds a dimension to the whole content offering.
And Dan, that role and importance of ancillary content highlights was something that came up in your presentation. What is the purpose of that content? Does that serve an audience in its own right, or is the push ultimately to the live product?
Well, I think there's a bit of both at play, and as you just said, you know, the importance of this ultra short form, snappy, TikTok friendly kind of content. There is going to be a subset of sports fans who are more focused just on that kind of thing, but as we've seen, football fans in Europe generally aren't watching too much live, less than the average amount. So it's just under 4 hours of live sport per week. So that says to me that it still has a huge part as being part of the broader sport offering. So not, okay, for some people that's all they're going to want to consume, but actually the live is still crucial as well. So, and as we've seen, there is that correlation between the amount that people are spending on short form content and betting and all of these other things in driving that live viewership. So I think there's a bit of both at play, but my view is that it's crucial as part of the wider strategy around the live product, which is what drives the vast majority of rights revenue at the end of the day. So these things are crucial, but anything that you can get to push people more towards the live is what's going to generate growth in rights revenue in the long term.
And I think probably what also is important is that the short form content brings the personalities of the footballers to life. And we all want to see more of that. And, you know, the Premier League do a very good job of creating the ability to be able to get to players now and have that unique opportunity to try and understand who they are and what they're interested in. And then you're selling the product better.
And that push to get closer to the action behind the scenes, what do you need as someone leading on the production side of things? What do you need and able to offer more of that?
Friendly sporting directors.
Yeah.
I think you need a good relationship with the clubs, obviously. You also need to be able to work with the league. But in particular, it's. I mean, we try to do the same type of production for Amazon at the moment, whereby we are getting as close to the action as possible. So we always want to be pitch side. In Germany, it's great because they have a culture where coaches and players will come and join the presentation. It less so in Italy. We're working really hard in trying to get that to happen because it's not culturally as acceptable. And certainly over the Premier League over the last few years, there's been a huge switch from interviewing coaches and managers or players as they arrive on the advertising boards. Now they all come and join the position on the pitch with the talent from the broadcasters, and you just get a much better experience. So the answer to your question is working really hard with the clubs and the leagues or the federations, UEFA, to be able to get that type of access and to be able to deliver better live content, but also content that can be then clipped up and used on short form.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting to hear those regional differences in what is deemed acceptable, I guess. Lorin, go on.
Yeah, no, I just think that what you see across Europe is an experiment like La Liga is doing, where in terms of distribution key, they have an envelope that they, make available for clubs who make behind-the-scenes content available to, producers and to the rights holders. And so, giving them drawing rights when, you're growing your fan base in terms of social media following or in terms of making extra content available to the rights holder, it's definitely an interesting model.
Yeah. How far can you push it as with the Pro League? I saw some coverage last night actually where huddle at the start of the match and you had a camera right in, kind of listening to the audio of the captain giving a kind of speech before the kickoff, which isn't something that we see in every league. So how do you build on that, and how do you get even more behind the scenes?
Well, I was going to say, how far can we push it? Ask me again next year when we're sure about where we are. But I think it's crucial. I think we're somewhere in the middle, today in terms of what we make available in terms of players and coaches and behind the scenes coverage. We do see, of course, what the Zone is doing in Belgium is they're trying to get now on an individual basis with the clubs, because of course we can't break into the running or the current television rights contract. They're trying to make separate agreements to make sure that they have that extra content that they can actually put towards the fan. So we definitely, as a league, aim to make it so that the fan is better served, knows more about the players, knows more about the stories that we aim to tell. And so in the next television rights contract, it's definitely one of our aims.
Go on, Robert.
Well, I was just going to say it's exactly the right question, and the sort of the road to travel. Personally, as a football fan generally, and I hope that Lorin will be able to work with the clubs and to get them, but to have access. I think in the dressing room is going to be difficult, but in and around as soon as you can before the kickoff. That 5 minutes before kickoff and 5 minutes after are crucial. And I mean, who would not want to listen to the referee and maybe what's said to the referee? So all these areas of content, which if you look across the pond to the US, they are really they push the innovation button. We should be inspired by. I think there are limits. You can't do everything, but there's still some steps that can be taken.
Just IFAB that you have to deal with.
That's
I was
correct.
going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not just the authorities; it's players as well, isn't it? Because we saw in it was an Amazon fixture, a Man City match where there was a camera on the dugout, and
Kyle Walker,
that's it, who took offence to being filmed so closely and decided to dismantle the camera during the match.
And it was great because it went viral, so that little bit of disruption worked perfectly. But yeah, he wasn't happy with the camera, so ripped it off, and we went and apologised and sort of said, but the club had all agreed it beforehand. I think he just took exception when he thought it was in his face.
Yes, he was very gentle in how he took it apart and kind of go on, Dan.
I was just going to say we're also seeing some clubs start to take it upon themselves with slightly longer form behind the scenes stuff, with the All or Nothing series. I think that's the right name. I'm getting confused with some of the other documentaries.
Sunderland Till I Die.
Sunderland Till I Die, yeah. And there's several across the NFL that have done it, and Tottenham and Arsenal and Man City, and so that's kind of maybe slightly different to what you guys are discussing, where it's more around kickoff either side and those kind of behind the scenes things. But I don't know if we're going to see more clubs or even leagues take that longer form approach as well with documentary series.
Is that what you need? A Netflix documentary?
Yeah, I think everybody, thinks now that's the solution to, to everything. But I think the difference when a club does it, I think it's a good thing because they're catering to their fan base and they're making sure that they stay loyal. I think the league has a slightly different task, and that's making sure that people who are not fully engaged yet as a club fan also get drawn in, and that's something that you do exactly through the ancillary content that you need to make. Yeah.
But ultimately, it comes back to storytelling. And if Lorin can guarantee that every season is going to end like the last one, then you've got a great product.
You do have a great product.
Yeah. It's guaranteed.
And just very quickly, because we've only got a few minutes left, but I wanted to pick up on a point that was raised in your keynote and in your presentation, Dan, and that's around piracy, because it seemed like there were some pretty stark figures there. I think it was 20-something% of the rights that you estimated are kind of knocked off by piracy within Belgium. And then it was around 51% of viewers pirating content.
Football fans in the big big five European markets is where that stat is drawn from.
So should we be alarmed? How much of an issue is this? And how do you deal with it? Is it a production issue? How can you kind of counter?
Well, I think we should be alarmed if you look at the numbers. Secondly, I think we need legislative action because if you can have dynamic injunctions, so that you don't have to go to the court every time you want to block, somebody who is pirating content of you, but you have a standing order and that you can just apply to anyone who's in violation of the media rights that you are selling, that would help a lot. So we are pushing for that on the European level with European leagues and on the Belgian level. And then, there's technical solutions, but they're not perfect. I think what we do with La Liga is an example of what you can do. You've seen the number of interventions that we've done since we've entered into an agreement with them. But obviously, they're always one step ahead. So you need to keep innovating. You need to keep working on all different fronts to make sure that you have an answer towards pirates. And the third element in that whole conversation is, of course, what right holders are willing to do, because we've been talking about the younger market, we've been talking about the different kinds of content that they're interested in. That also means that, of course, that also means that there is room for freemium content models, where you have a very low pay per month strategy, where you put some of the content where you make some of the content readily available, mix that in with one or two, great games, and then have a premium offer. That's also a strategy that can be used to combat piracy. So I think we need to do all three.
I think the only thing that I would add is just we see we're doing football across the globe, and it's everywhere. So it's an issue, not just in Europe. Latin America has got a major issue, also in Asia. Look, I could go on, and it's exactly you cannot. To me, I sort of liken it a bit to doping. So they're always trying to find solutions to get against anti-doping, but the doper's always a little bit ahead. Piracy, I think, will always be that way, and it has to be accepted. But if you fight it on the right levels, and you do get the governments involved, because they're a little bit static at the moment and not penalizing heavily enough, then work with the technology, and then work with the products you've got, so you're just better, that's how you will lessen it. Whether piracy ever going away, I don't believe it.
And Nick, is there any role for production in this, or is this a downstream problem?
Predominantly downstream, and obviously we always support in as much as we possibly can. But it's finding those technical solutions and looking for support from the various governments. So yes, production needs to be involved, but it's really in a supportive side.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time. So listen, thank you all very much for taking the time to join us. I could have carried on talking all afternoon to you, but it wouldn't be very fair on our other panelists. So please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you very much.